Annie Costabile with Front Office Sports here alongside Ted Leonsis, principal owner of the Caps, the Wizards, and the Mystics, which we're here to talk about. Ted, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for the invite.
Of course. We're experiencing a pivotal moment in women's sports. The record-breaking numbers in attendance, viewership, even investment. But you've been here for 2 decades. What has this surge been like to experience for someone like yourself?
It's not surprising to me. When I was running America Online, we had a lot of info on demography, and there's more women than men. Women control spending in the household. More and more graduates, more women graduating from college than men. So the demography was heading that way, and I always thought that women's sports was being underserved, underinvested in. And so when the opportunity came to step in and buy the Mystics 20 years ago, I said, this will be a growth stock. Now, as an entrepreneur, you always think it's going to get bigger faster than you thought. It took a little bit longer, but we're certainly in that mode right now. This is the fastest growing segment of the pro sports landscape.
Yeah, when you think about that growth, one of the ways we're going to see, or one of the areas we're going to see it impact is obviously the CBA. And I know we can't go into too many details, but I did just want to get your perspective on, the rising valuations of teams coupled with the new media rights deal. What's realistic in terms of where we see the salary cap go in this next round of CBA?
I really can't address the CBA side. I haven't been involved, and we're not supposed to. But I will say that it's a growth business, and that we're starting to see attendance and television ratings all really being strong. And so for this generation of player, we have to be in it together, if you will. I mean, my biggest my biggest focus this year is we generate a lot of momentum last year. We should not take anything for granted. We have to reinvest in the fan experience. We have to reinvest in the athlete. We have to reinvest in what we're doing in media. Last year, we were the first WNBA team, because we own the network, the RSN, to be able to have dedicated pre- and post-game shows just for the Mystics. All our games are on television. That was a first. And so I think if everyone does the right thing in the right way, the sport can be ascendant, the women can be treated kind of the way that they deserve, because they're connecting with the fan base. And that's the thing that we can never lose sight of, that everything comes from the fan in. And these women are now great athletes too. We need the media to pay the respect and the homage to the game itself. The athleticism of these players is really great, and now we're starting to have coverage. You played basketball growing up. You understand how hard these women train, what they have to do during the off season to keep their bodies fit. We're making the season longer. I'm sure over time it'll lengthen, because more games, more revenue, more interest from the networks to be able to go out and get sponsors. I mean, it's just a virtuous cycle that we're all working to create.
The once talked about new stadium in Virginia at one point meant that the Mystics were going to move to Capital One Arena. And now that investment is being made into improving Capital One Arena, where do the Mystics stand in that landscape, and where will they be playing in the future? Yeah,
my expectation, and our mayor and I have a strong relationship, and we want to have the big building available to the men and the women. Our last game of the season last year, we played Indiana, and it was the most tickets and revenue ever generated in a WNBA game. So our market is there. Now, it took a while to get there. The Mystics use as do the Wizards and the Go-Go, the practice facility. They share that, and it's world-class, brand new. And we have a 5,000-seat arena. And that's been right for some of the games. Last year, we were able to play 4 games, I believe, in the big building. And now we're going through a major renovation, so we can't play any games in the summer. We're moving some games to George Mason University. We're moving some games into Baltimore to try to expand the market, get more interest in the region. But my expectation is when the deal is completed and we spend the $800 million and upgrade the building, the Mystics probably will be playing there all the time.
So it's fair to say that that 5,000 arena, at one point, great for the Mystics, but at this point with the growth, it's no longer the best option for the team.
Yes, except for we have to see what the reality is. I mean, let's be straightforward. This phenomenon that we're seeing, it's around a couple of teams. We're sold out now for the 5,000 seat arena. That's fantastic. Having sellout crowds, the excitement, the energy, that's great. If you sold 8,000 tickets instead of 5,000, but you're playing in a 20,000 seat arena, you don't feel as successful. Right. So I don't know if today we could sell out every game 20,000 seats. So we're fortunate in that we own the buildings, or we manage the buildings, we own the network, we own the teams. We can toggle it back and forth to what's best optimized. And we want a great fan experience. Fans don't like being in an empty building. Right. I don't think our buildings will ever be empty again, but a sellout crowd, very, very exciting, making the playoffs, being on national television, getting that spiral going up. That's what our goal is with the Mystics.
New owners have come into the WNBA and been aggressive and ambitious with their investments, so much so that some have been willing to take slap on the wrists over the years. How have those investments from some of these new owners forced reflection from yourself in terms of how you can improve the Mystics as an organization?
Well, I think that's always good to be self-reflective. I don't want to say that we kind of wrote the book on that, but Sheila Johnson's one of our partners, and Sheila was the lead with the Mystics, and we were very, very aggressive day one, 20 years ago, redoing the locker room, making sure that we help the players get jobs in the off season, encouraging them to develop their skills and their aptitude for business outside of basketball. And we continue that. We were the first team to get a shared space. And if you look at the training facility in DC, and we were very aggressive in free agency and trades. As you know, you were in Chicago. We made a big investment and brought Elena Deladon. And we also took one of our players and made her a assistant coach with the Washington Wizards. And so we've innovated and we've made big investments in our media outreach and the like. But people are raising the bar, and that's good for the league. And so that's why we will make these big investments in our arena, and hopefully they'll play there as well.
Where has this perception then come of the new and the old guard when it comes to the WNBA ownership?
Well, I think what's being a little bit misinterpreted is that there are the NBA itself, right? And if you look at the structure, the NBA, the WNBA was launched as a single entity league. So the NBA owned the WNBA. And then 15 years ago, they spun out. They sent the teams and gave them to the owners. So we own an NBA team, and then we owned a WNBA team. Some of the NBA owners sold their teams to independent owners. So in Chicago, the Reinsdorfs, who, the lead investors in the Bulls, they don't own the Chicago team. Brooklyn, they own the NBA team, and now they own the Liberty, the WNBA team. And so if you own a sports franchise, and we're one of the largest at scale, we can make those kinds of investments. If you're an independent owner, you have to compete across the board. It depends on what market you're in. Herb Simon has done a great job. Herb is the longest tenured WNBA team owner in Indiana. We're the second longest tenured owner. And as we fill out, you see the expansion that's happening. For the most part, they look primarily at, is there an NBA owner that will step in and put that in? In Toronto, Larry Tannenbaum, who owns both the Maple Leafs and the Raptors, he took that expansion team. And even though it's a separate organization. So, I think the profile of the ownership is different, but there's independent owners and NBA owners that bought WNBA teams.
As we wrap up here, I wanted your perspective on the dual ownership. You own 3 franchises, and there's an idea that if you own multiple franchises, one of them is going to suffer, or one of them is not going to be able to meet the other. And I think specifically when we're talking about owners in the WNBA, who again, to your point, own an NBA team and a WNBA team, there are some who think that the WNBA funding is going to suffer. What hurdles do you face as a dual owner, an owner of 3 franchises actually?
Well, I own an NBA team, I own a WNBA team, and we helped lead and we participated in the league financing. So I own WNBA 3 ways, and I think only Joe Tsai and Claire Tsai and Herb have done that kind of investing. So we're fully committed. But when you ask a question like that, I say, I have a son and I have a daughter, and I'm married forever. I love them all equally. I don't really think that that's a question on where will your loyalties be. It'll be based on who needs the level of investment right now. And this is a time where we're investing in the league and the teams, and it's a growth stock. When you invest in growth stocks, you have to be prepared for losses. You're saying we are investing today for the next 20 years. We're just finishing our first 20 years, and so we're very, very committed to doing the right thing the right way and making sure that the WNBA can become like the NBA or like the NHL in terms of revenues, in terms of fan engagement and overall reach.
So last thing for you then, when you speak about that investment, beyond the potential for the Mystics to move arenas when that renovation is done, what other areas are the Mystics investing in right now to take advantage of this moment?
Constantly in staff and medical. We had a big draft, and a young woman who we drafted going to be our point guard, she was injured right away, second day of practice. And so the intensity and the amount of support around that, she felt what we're offering wouldn't be offered elsewhere because we're treating her like she was a first-round pick in the NBA, same level of intensity of care. I think all of the work that we're doing in travel right now, I went to the WNBA draft. I looked around, I didn't see a lot of other owners, primary owners at the draft, and I flew them back on my plane. That was a show of support, and I had done that the previous year for the NBA, and I said, I have to do this, it's the right thing to do, but the players should expect that. That if we had 3 picks in the first round, of course we should be engaged. We should show everyone that this really matters to us. So I think for us it's organic. We don't need to be lectured. We don't have to be told this game matters, the sport matters, the team matters, invest in the brand, invest in the infrastructure. We went to the finals a couple of years ago. We won a championship a couple of years ago. That's addictive. I mean, we're in this to win championships, bring our community together. Elena's come back and is working with us. We want to have that kind of alumni. The other day I was talking to some of our players in the new arena. What statue are we going to have of you? Elena was MVP of the league. She was MVP in Chicago, MVP for us. We don't have any other players that have been MVPs of 2 teams. She needs a big statue, right? And we can make those kinds of cultural accoutrements and make them central so that you become a destination. That's, I think, what the key thing will be in the WNBA, are you a destination? We've got a couple of super teams right now in the league. We all aspire to want to build that so that we can all be competing at a very high level.
Absolutely. Ted, thank you.